Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today, I want to go ahead and bring you a video and a question I actually get asked a lot, which is how do I go about growing my census in my agency? Okay, and this is going to be from my experience where we've helped dozens of agencies and facilities across the US to grow their census, right? That's essentially what we focus on, the systems and the process and actually doing that work to help agencies grow their census. So just a quick sneak peek. As you can see here, I have a lot to talk about, a lot of strategy and a lot of tactical stuff you can take away. So let's go ahead and get right into it. Okay. Now, what is it that you actually have to do here, right? What is the biggest thing that I don't see agencies doing? What is the work that's going to need to be taken in order to grow your census? The main thing, honestly, is going to be marketing yourself. Not enough agencies market themselves, right? They don't understand what separates them from their competitors. They don't understand, their actual story, right? Why people would work with them instead of working with any other agency, and actually advertising that, marketing that, right? Because if people don't know you exist, they're not gonna work with you. They're not gonna work with your services because how could they? They don't know about you. So, and now let's get into how. How do I actually do it? How do I actually market myself? How do I actually brand myself so that people do want to come, sign up for my services and of course grow your census? Let's get into that, right? So let's talk about real quick kind of the framework and understanding you need to have to understand pretty much how this works. So in your agency, there's going to be the front end part. This is typically the part before leads or referrals become a client. Okay, so this is everything before that. So that is like marketing, sales, etc. Then there's going to be the back end part, which is, everything, for example, your client care coordinator, your caregivers, the referral process, everything people need, right, or do once they do become a client. So that's going to be the back end part of your agency. And each one has their role in growing your census. So we're going to get into that. So the goal here in your front end part is one, people need to know you exist. So marketing. Second, they need to become interested in your services, right? Really what makes you stand out compared to your competitors. And then third, they need to go ahead and make a commitment to use your services. And that's going to be typically through the sales process, right? And so obviously this can mix and vary based off the type of, client profile you're going after. Are you going for Medicaid? Are you going for Medicare? Or rather just state insurances? Are you going for private pay? Right? Of course, state insurances, you have the discharge planners. They typically, or social workers, they typically are the ones that are, doing the selling for you in a sense, right? Or if it's private pay, it'll be somebody, right? Whether that's a marketer, whether that's you or somebody in your admin or an office, they'll be the ones doing the selling. So at the end of the day, it still works. It's still the front end part. On the back end part, right? When they do enroll and you get a new case, you're typically, the goal here is to onboard smoothly and as quick as possible. You want them to go and feel great about your services, really feel the benefit and the value of your services. And then from there, at the end of it, you want them to refer your agency, right? Which adds into your census. And we'll pretty much dive in deep into what that would look like. So now you understand these two different sides. Let's talk about pretty much the client journey process and the client perspective on how this looks. Okay, so we have something here called a funnel. Now, a funnel, in case you've never heard of one, is the visual process that focuses on the client's journey, right? And this is where you pretty much integrate both the front end and back end part, because of course, before any client becomes a client, they're first a stranger, right? First, they don't really know about your brand. They don't know about you. Okay, so we want to kind of have this process in place so we understand, hey, this is where we're falling short, right? And I'm going to get into it in just a second. So you have your funnel, you have strangers or families who don't know about you, right? And whether they get introduced by an ad they see online, whether that's in a marketer in, let's say, a facility they're at, or maybe it's a discharge planner or social worker. Okay, they get introduced. So once they become from strangers, there'll be the inquiry process, right? The process of finding out, hey, will this be a good fit? Kind of surface level digging on potentially working and seeing what you offer, etc. So that's going to be the inquiry process when they become a lead or they're a referral. From there, you'll have the in-home assessment. You'll go into their house. You'll go and perform the assessment, create a care plan, etc., and really finalize the details of them becoming a client. This, up to this point right here, this is all front end facing. Okay, from there, once they say, yes, let's do it, this sounds great, this is where the enrollment and the onboarding process begins, and also the service part. Okay, so this is everything that has to do with the back end part, and then finally, they're satisfied, everything is good, they'll, eventually know somebody who might need these services, and they'll go ahead and perform, go ahead and share a referral with you. So in this case, okay, and the reason why I bring this up is because this is going to be a powerful concept and tool you'll want to use in order to visualize where you're falling short at each stage of the client's journey. So let me kind of explain here. So where I see most agencies fail, for example, inconsistent marketing. Some months they might have, let's say, a lot of leads or referrals, right? Because they're reaching out, they're going in person or they're doing online marketing, they're advertising, they're going to facilities, they're going to rehab facilities, and they're reaching a lot of strangers and they're getting a lot of people to inquire, right? But when you're doing inconsistent marketing, when 1 month you might be doing that, the next month you're not, what happens is that month where you're not doing it, you reach out less strangers. And guess what happens to the rest of the funnel? Because you reach out to less people, there's less people who become leads, there's less assessments, there's less clients, etc. Okay, so one thing I noticed, especially when it comes to startups or at least agencies that are smaller, there's that inconsistent marketing, right? You need to be consistently going out there because this is ultimately what's going to feed the business, right? Without this, I mean, you're not going to have any business at all, and the business will slowly die, which, of course, that's not something you want. The next thing where I see most agencies fail, especially in the beginning process, is they're not answering their phones, okay? So here, for example, you might be, let's say you might have a marketer, you might be doing some online marketing, you're advertising, you're going into these facilities, you're reaching out to a lot of strangers, right? And they're calling. But what happens is when you don't pick up the phone, guess what? The amount of leads that actually go into this assessment part is way smaller, right? It shrinks. And what happens from there? That means less assessments means less clients, and less clients means less referrals. And ultimately, you're just kind of spending or wasting time. And this is what your funnel looks like, which you don't want. So that's another thing where I see, especially when, agencies come to me, where I see them falling short on. So, and we're going to get into pretty much the solution to all these different things and pretty much how we can help you. From there, there's no system to keep track of leads or referrals, right? Especially when the team is bigger than just one, right? Bigger than just you. You want to make sure that all your admins, care coordinators understand, hey, look, we have this lead. Okay, from there, we have this lead, we need to go ahead and follow up with them. They went ahead and booked an assessment. We need to be at their home at this time, right? You don't want to be running your agency on pen and paper, okay? You want to be able to see or have your team see and hold them accountable, especially when you're starting to delegate and hire other team members, to make sure that they're actually following up with leads, they're answering the inquiries on time, and on top of that, they're showing up to the assessments. Okay, so what happens is when you don't have a system to keep track of these leads or referrals, there's just simply less people who are actually going into the assessment, right? Less inquiries, which means less assessments, which means less clients, which means less referrals. Okay, and just let me share with you quickly what I mean by a system to keep track of all this. So this is exactly what I want to go ahead and show you as a system to go ahead and really keep your team and yourself accountable when it comes to new leads that have came in, following up with leads, and ultimately just tracking where the lead is at any given time to know who you should be prioritizing. Okay, so for example, there is what we call here client care. This is going to be a test account that you'll see. So this is not a real home care agency, but this is, filled to it pretty much show you the concept of it, right? And so as you can see here, this is something called a pipeline, right? Or CRM. CRM stands for Customer Relationships Management Tool. And ultimately what it's here to serve is pretty much where each lead is at any given stage, right? So let's say, for example, we have a new inquiry. Her name is Betty. So Betty came from, let's say, ads. Okay. So she came in, she gave us a call. From there, what happens is once we go ahead and process this call, let's say I'm somebody in your office, right? I'm one of your admins. What I'll do is I'll say, okay, Betty called. We're going to be going ahead and following up with her, right? And so what's beautiful about this, right, is that you'll be able to see a couple of information, her email, where exactly she came from, all these different things, and you'll be able to email and text her if you have her number, okay? And you'll be able to see all this here. I mean, you can leave notes. You can go ahead and schedule the actual assessments. You can add documents. You can invoice her if she's private pay in this case, right? There's a couple different things that you'll want in a software to be able to do this type of thing. And ultimately, once we go ahead and follow up with Betty, let's say that she goes ahead and actually books an assessment. We go ahead and give her a call. she goes and books an assessment. From there, we actually show up. Let's say it's on our calendar here that Betty goes ahead and actually does the assessment. So we show up to the assessment, and then later on, we'll go ahead and update Betty and saying, hey, she's enrolled as a client, right? Again, a great way to go ahead and pretty much track where each lead is at and who you need to be following up with, right? For example, the people that are closer to being enrolled are the leads that you want to go ahead and give the most attention to, right? Because they're much closer than, for example, let's say here, Betty in the beginning, they're much closer to becoming clients. And so you really want to focus on these people first. Okay. And that's pretty much how using a software like this or a system to be able to track and keep people accountable. Okay. Because of course you come in here, you check this every day. It's going to be a lot easier for you than, let's say, checking your emails or checking your contacts and seeing who do you need to follow up with, right? Because that's very inconsistent and people might slip through the cracks, which again means you're leaving money on the table. So that's what I mean by no system. I just wanted to quickly show you guys what that would look like. And of course, and the last thing is, I don't see agencies asking for referrals, right? So typically they'll go ahead and, perform their great quality service, but they typically wait for referrals to come their way. So go ahead and quote a Bible verse, right? Matthew 7:7, ask and you shall receive, right? So if the more agencies that ask for referrals, the more referrals you get. Right. It's not necessarily, a kind of salesy to go ahead and ask. It's simply asking your clients, hey, do you know anybody else who can benefit from the service that we provide here, right? The service that you love, do you know anybody else? And this is something you can ask on a regular basis. So, let's say like on a monthly basis, you don't have to ask every time you see them, but definitely asking them, things happen in life, right? They might know a sibling who maybe is also starting to need care, right? They're not operating the same way that they used to. And so they'll go ahead and maybe like, hey, you know what? Yeah, I think my sister might benefit from your service, right? Or something along those lines, right? There's many different scenarios where people might know other people. So you want to make sure that you're consistently asking, you'll simply get more referrals. Okay. So that's where I see most agencies fail. So let's talk about what exactly it is you'll need. Okay. So number one, when it comes to marketing, people need to know your agency exists. So you want to do, again, in-person marketing, online marketing. Okay. Especially if you're looking for more private pay. That's exactly where you want to be, and making sure that they become interested in your services. This is understanding your story and really what separates you from your competitors. On the sales side, you'll need to go ahead and making sure you're converting inquiries into assessments. So one, of course, the obvious thing is answering your phone, answering your fax, answering your emails of any referrals or inquiries or leads that have came in interested in your services. Okay. So in this case, you'll definitely want to make sure if you have the capacity to assign somebody, right, to picking up the phone, right? So if you want to think about this person will be in charge of setting the assessments, right? Setting the assessments on, let's say, your calendar or your care coordinator's calendar, whoever's doing the assessment. And on top of that, you want to also have something to make sure that they're consistently doing that. What is that? Typically, it's going to be a script, right? So if they answer a lead, right, a call that they're getting, you want to make sure that they're able to do so consistently, and a script allows you to control that process and make sure it happens consistently. The next thing is you want to go ahead and make sure you're converting that assessment into an actual client. This should be pretty much the easiest part in this whole process, in the front end part. Really, once you're in the client's home, it's not that difficult, assuming they're qualified and, you're able to go ahead and kind of give them service. It's not that hard to convince them to enroll for your services. I think the industry standard is about 80 to 90% converting from lead into, from assessment into enrollment or into client. So that shouldn't be too hard. Of course, you can create your own process on that, have a folder, etc., and it shouldn't be too hard, right? I would say the biggest pitfall I see most agencies have is this process right here. And yeah. So the next part is the client care coordination. Now, of course, you want to make sure they have a smooth and quick onboarding, and on top of that, you're providing great quality service. I don't think I have to kind of jump on this too much, but make sure you have that. And then finally, the referral process, right? You can create a process to ask client for referrals. Again, in the software here, you can have, for example, a kind of a referral pipeline from all the different referrals you've gotten from your previous clients. And then just make sure you're following up with referrals, right? Having your team be accountable by having a software like this to go ahead and follow up with referrals. Now, Now that you kind of understand what you'll need from where I see most agencies falling, right? And ultimately, really growing your census, right? Essentially, it just boils down to getting more leads consistently, okay, and quality leads. Second, making sure you're converting those leads into actual assessments, getting into their home, right? Because the biggest issue I would say, in growing your census on the front end part is getting into the lead's home, right, or the family's home. Once you're in their home, it's pretty easy to close them. It's just the steps you need before that, marketing and actually selling them the assessment in order to go ahead and get into their home. From there, on the back end part, just make sure you have great quality service, smooth onboarding, and then of course you're asking for more referrals. The more you ask, the more referrals you get. Okay, that's pretty much what it boils down to when it comes to growing your census. And now let's talk about a bit about how we help agencies. Because in case you need any help with this, I want to go ahead and extend this over to you. We help agencies market themselves, understand pretty much what separates them from their competitors, and making sure they're getting consistent flow of families calling them, right? Which is kind of the next thing I have here. We have families who need care, who need home care, who are looking for home care, call the agencies themselves, right? We want to make sure that you have leads consistently flowing, you have a pipeline full, so that you never really have a problem with that, which is, I think, one of the biggest problems I see agencies have. The next thing is we want to integrate our software that I just showed you right now to keep agencies accountable, whether that's yourself, whether that's your team, to make sure you're following up, right? There's no point in doing all this marketing, paying for ads or paying for a marketer or doing the marketing yourself, and then falling short and leaving money on the table because you forgot you needed to follow up with Betty, 2 days ago about something. And then finally, create a referral process for agencies to get more referrals. Super important thing. The best type of leads or referrals are word of mouth referrals. They tend to convert high and tend to stay longer. So of course you want to make sure you're creating a process around this. And that's what we help agencies with and all these different type of stages, right? And so if you're looking for help in any of this, if you need help implementing any of this into your agency, you can click on the link down below to schedule a call to speak with me or my team. And we love to kind of walk you through and create a custom strategy based off where your agency is at on how we can help you do this. If you enjoyed this, go ahead and give us a like, please. I would very much appreciate that. You can also subscribe, right? To go ahead and kind of get notified on the different videos I'll be dropping later on in regards to AI, home care, growing your census. I mean, these are very common topics that I go ahead and speak about on this channel. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll go ahead and speak to you soon. Have a great one.